Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm Richard Owen here on behalf of the BAPT, the British Association for Psychological Type. For those who don't know, we're a member-based organisation and most of our members are either professionals using psychological type in their work or those who are just interested in the topic. And we run an annual conference, which I'll tell you more about shortly. They're coming up in April this year. We've got the next one. And we produce a quarterly magazine called Typeface with all like articles, news, research, and so on to do with psychological type. So this is our third In Conversation With webinar, and I'm very happy to and proud to introduce to you tonight Jane Kise from the United States. Hello, Jane.
Hi, how are you today?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Good, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And so, are you in Minneapolis?
That's right.
Okay. I think we can see a little bit of snow outside you there. It's obviously deepest winter there in Minneapolis, right?
Right. It's about 5 degrees Fahrenheit out today. So, good morning to go skiing if I had my skis here, but they're up at the lake. So, I don't have to, or I can't go out.
Oh, so you mentioned before you're into Nordic skiing, right?
Right.
As a specific type.
Well, cross country as opposed
I don't know
to
much. Okay, wow, that's beyond me. I'm not very good at skiing, so I fell over and broke my hand doing it when I was 11, and I've never gone back really. So yeah, so that's interesting. So Minneapolis, and have you always been based there, or did you start off somewhere else?
No, I've always lived. Actually, I grew up in St. Paul, which is on the other side of the Mississippi River, and married somebody from the suburb next door, and then we moved all the way to Minneapolis. So but I have traveled, so I've expanded my horizons that way. But it's a good place to live, and it's a fun place right now. Even though I'm not a big American football fan, I highly recommend going online and searching for the Vikings playoff game video to see. On Sunday, we were down by 1 point, and with 10 seconds to go, the long story short, it was what we call a Hail Mary pass, caught in a 63-yard run for a touchdown in actually the last second of the game. And there's beautiful shots of players from both teams just going, what? Because, I mean, no one could believe it. So we're one game away from the Super Bowl, and if that happens, the Super Bowl is actually in Minneapolis, which that was decided 4 years ago, that this is where the Super Bowl is. So there are a lot of excited people hoping that we get past the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Vikings haven't been to the Super Bowl since the 1970s when we lost 4 in a row. So that's Minnesota right now. No one's talking anything else. Whether they're ESTPs or INFJs, it's all football, even if they hate football.
I was going to say it brings all personality types together. This win. It's bringing the community into harmony, right?
That's right. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
if they lose,
great.
It'll be a bad thing next Sunday. But not. We're used to it. We're used to it.
So in terms of your work with psychological type, I mean, just give us a quick rundown in how you got involved with it in the first place.
I was doing strategic planning work for small banks because I have an MBA in finance, and I wanted to use my English major, my other degree, a little more. I thought I'd do some more writing. So I signed up for a committee at my church where they were developing some curriculum to help people find out better what they do best. And so on that committee was a woman named Sandra Hirsch, who still is one of the icons of the type community, although she's pretty much retired now. And she asked me to write a couple books with her on personality type and encouraged me to go through the certification program. And the next thing I knew, people from the church program were asking me to work with their school staffs. And that led to doing research and education, and here I am. So you just never know what'll happen when you volunteer for something.
Yeah, and then so you got this doctorate in education, right, along the way,
Mm-hmm.
and you were saying to me earlier you work with is it people in high school age? Is that a lot of your clients?
I work with what we would call kindergarten through year 12 students. And then I also do quite a bit of work with university leaders as well. So, and then the corporate stuff that comes along the way. So, it varies time to time, year to year, what I'm doing. But a lot of it is either using type as a framework for coaching teachers to become better teachers and to change up their classrooms so that they are meeting the needs of more students. But sometimes it actually involves helping the children figure out their personality types and working at it from that self-advocacy standpoint too.
Hmm. And
And
how does it work in the United States? I mean, is it individual schools that are in charge of whether they use type in their particular school, or is it like is there an authority overall that brings it in?
there are our public schools are organized into what we call school districts. So that might be as big as the whole city of Minneapolis, or it could be split up into, just a primary, and a secondary school in a rural area might be one school district. And for example, when I worked in Minneapolis, several of the schools independently had me in. So they had site authority to work with me on type. And then I did some things at the district level. For example, the mathematics coordinator had me run a 4-day workshop for mathematics teachers on how to change up their teaching based on the personality types of their students. And then I did just straight team building work with Minneapolis as well. So it can happen either way.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of impact have you seen through that work in schools?
Well, just like I think any country I've worked in, it's really hard to get, well, any company too, to get them to do it over a long period of time. When we've seen it over a long period of time, a couple things happen easily. One is more students complete the work. They simply, the teachers know how to motivate them. They change up their toolkit so that they're helping the perceiving types live in the very judging world of school, might be one way to talk about it. They're not giving assignments that only meet the needs of a few students, so more kids are interested in what they're doing. In Minneapolis, when we had, when the school principal was also a certified practitioner, and we worked with the staff over a 6-year period, I think it was about year 3 that we'd taken the failure rate on big projects, like doing History Day research projects and science fair things. When I first got there, only about 70% of the kids would complete those big projects. And by that 3rd year, 100% were completing those big projects. And the second huge thing we saw easily was a major increase in relationships between teachers and students and less disciplinary problems. And I wish I could say, we saw, because everyone cares, or not everyone, but because the government cares about test scores, I wish I could say that test scores went up, but we had in the schools where I've had the long-term impact, in some cases, the students were so mobile, as in like 30 to 40% were moving every year. So they'd only be in a school for a year, and then the family would move to some place where they'd have to go to a different school. So we couldn't track the data on test scores. We certainly saw retention of knowledge when teachers would teach up in different ways, and all kinds of positive things.
It's amazing results. I mean, what kind of methods did the type work lead to with teachers? Can you give us some sort of examples of how they would adapt to the kids?
Some of it is so simple, like letting students out of their seats to work at the whiteboard so that your extroverted kids could stand up and move and chat with each other while they were working on fractions, or things like that. Or with sensing and intuition, giving the 2 kinds of assignments, like, name the 4 characters in the book and what they did, and imagine yourself as a character in the book. What would you have done differently? You know, so you had just giving kids choices between the two ways they might do the assignments. I think one of the big things was it didn't take long for the teachers to figure out that, yes, they really were great teachers and flexible and giving choice, but the choices were choices that appealed to them. They almost never gave anything for their opposites. And you know, even, you know, my husband, some of the people on this know I've been married to my opposite for 36 years now. He's an ESTP and he was a teacher. He's retired now, but he was running a chess club one time for quite a few years as a intercurricular. It was a what we call a 7th hour activity. So every student had to be enrolled in something, but they had a choice. And so the choice he was leading was chess club, but he had to do some grading assignments so that they got credit for things. And I said, well, why don't you make one of the choices reading a biography of a great chess player? And my ESTP Phi-Ed teacher husband said, no one's going to want to do that. And I said, just put it in. And of course, every semester, at least one student would want to do that, if not 4 or 5, because who plays chess? The introverts, the intuitives, who also are the ones most likely to read a book. They're, you know, my husband thought everyone would want to teach their parents or their siblings how to play chess because that's sort of an extroverted sensing thing to do. So that sort of, you know, that's a simple example, but that's what we saw over and over. The teachers being more willing to give or to tweak assignments or to give the kinds of choices that did not appeal to them, that almost seemed evil to them.
That's interesting. Yeah, the word evil. Yeah, the things which you would never think in a million years that anyone would want to do. It's all because of your own type preferences, your own way of looking at the world, which, as we know, most people don't even realize they have. They don't even realize that their own perception and processes on the world are a preference. Right. So, I mean, it's you know, it's the even waking up to the options, right? That people aren't even aware that there are options because it's so clear that that's how the world is and that's what people want.
You know, I was working in a really tough inner city school in Philadelphia, and this was 13 through 18-year-olds. And one of the math teachers, we'd been working on type in the school for 2 or 3 months, and one of the math teachers came up to me in the hall and said, so one of my year 10 students said, I could teach this lesson better than you. And I said, you know, I'll let you model this problem. And I gave him the chalk and let him go up to the whiteboard. And was that a good thing to do? And I said, well, how did it go? And he said, well, the student explained the problem really well. And I said, well, what do you think? Are you going to do it again? He said, I think I might. And I said, sounds good to me. And the teacher actually skipped down the hall. And this guy looked like he could be on any NBA basketball team, just to give you an idea of the teacher. But, you know, I think he was an INTP, actually, teacher. And so to give that kind of freedom to a student would be a little counter to his type, to say the least. So, you know, to have the teachers feel that sort of safety in trying something that outside of the box, I think is pretty cool.
Mm. And I guess there's, you know, in the normal school situation, there's a general way that school tends to be done. Maybe in the UK here, you know, lots of sitting down, lots of books and papers and tests and that kind of thing. So what kind of personality types, in your experience, do thrive in that kind of traditional environment?
The ISJs and the ESJs do really well in that kind of environment. We've got plenty of statistics from alternative schools saying that the SPs make up just a preponderance of the kids who don't make it in our normal schools. And a lot of the NPs also struggle, but like the ENTPs and ENFPs tend to pull a rabbit out of their hat somewhere toward the end of the semester and get by with their grades. INFPs and INTPs, they can struggle with their values or principles, but generally find a way to get the education they need. But they may not be happy about it.
And when you sort of were working in finance and you got introduced, was that the point you got introduced to type completely from scratch? Was that your first experience with type at that point in your life, or was it before that?
I was still working in finance. Well, yeah, I was doing still just a little bit of finance work, but mainly trying to move over to writing.
And so at that point, what insights did you get about your own growing up and your own school days?
You know, what I really learned, that I was very, very lucky to be the fifth child because as an INFJ in the public school, I didn't always do, you know, I craved assignments where I got to do what I wanted. So up until year 9, when school got interested, I wasn't necessarily a very good student, but my parents thought I was doing great because I was doing so much better than my 4 big brothers did. It made it so clear to me why I, craved the independent studies, and why the particular secondary school I went to, where we had very few books and were not told what to read, did so well for me, and why it didn't take off as the only way to teach school, given how well I and my friends did. It explained a lot of how I survived the public school system, might be the best way to talk about it. And, even the school I went to doesn't teach the way it did back in the 1970s. I'd love to see everyone actually enjoy learning, because that's the whole idea. There's a stat that says, people my age, when we went through secondary school, we were probably taught 75% of what we needed for life as far as knowledge and skills. And now, no matter what a school does, they can't teach more than about 3%, because knowledge and skills are changing so fast. So if we don't get kids on board to truly love learning, we haven't done them any favors, no matter how well they do in our school system.
Mm-hmm. And how far do you think this could go in the school system as a whole? I mean, you're working at this, presumably there's others, is there a way for this to get into the mainstream?
It's really tough, because we're up against some theories that come out of Harvard and Oxford and other places that have a better reputation, I think has been the biggest block. But due to some really nice partnering going on in the type community as a whole, we finally got some scalable, sustainable tools that I think will make a difference. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 years. Just two of the BAPT members, Angelina Bennett and Gareth, his last name is escaping me, developed an online, thank you, an online in-depth course on how to do a type interpretation. And they let me adapt it for education. And last summer, I took the first 4 educators through this online certification. And I'm doing the second one coming up soon, and one of them is sending 2 colleagues, and the other one's sending 6 more colleagues. So that's pretty good endorsement for what they felt they learned out of the first go round. And the class is filled, so I don't want to talk to the other 2 to see if they want to send anyone, because I don't have room.
Yeah, that's great. So there is a way of scaling this up and getting more teachers involved. But there's a long way to go, because it's the US is a huge country, a nation. It's right. A lot of schools, a lot of teachers, and it's probably the same in the UK here. Things take a long time to filter through to the mainstream.
And it's hard to get the right kind of research, because it's not necessarily an outcome in, their college entrance exam scores went up by 40 points when they were taught through type, because actually, a lot of students will do well whether the concepts are there or not, because we're not testing for things like motivation or how good they would have been if they truly had that sort of grounding in who they are. And everyone needs to learn in every style. You and I, as introverted intuitives, that's right on your type. Okay.
Yeah.
If we're going to be scientists, we have to get into a science lab and know how to actually do titration and set up experiments and run them. We can't, you have to be hands-on extroverted sensing to be a really good scientist. So it's not about just being taught in your own style.
Well, I guess that's the thing with science and introverted intuitives, is our relationship to empiricism and the physical material world in general is quite a tense one. So I get you there. But we're theorists at heart, I guess, and hopefully, if I always think if people would let us set the hypotheses and then not have to do the experiments, and then other people did the experiments, we'd be a lot better off.
Well, then I was sort of thinking the same thing until I saw The Imitation Game about Alan Turing and watched how his mental process sped up as he was actually building the code breaking machine and working with the others on the physical things. So I think no matter what our type, we're enriched when we access the other functions, even when there are less preferred. And I think it's in the MBTI manual that we're all at a disadvantage in some processes without a guide or a method. And that's how I view type in education, that we actually had kids say, oh, this is one of those things that's out of my preference, so I have to find a strategy to make it work. And that's far different from saying I'm stupid, I don't like this, or I don't know how to do this. They would recognize when they were being asked to move to something else.
That's a very good point. It's very powerful that you can understand your challenges in life, and not put it down to stupidity or lack of talent or whatever they would call it.
Yeah, and then it's not using it as an excuse, as we always talk about. So, just because I remember the school principal walked up behind two students when they knew she was in the room, and one of them said, well, I haven't started working on this yet because I'm a perceiving type, so I do best at the last minute. And the other girl said, well, there's only 5 minutes left in class. When are you going to start? And the girl goes, oh, I guess I better get started. It is the last minute. So, there's that banter, but also that understanding, yourself and how you do things. And there was a lot of joking that went on that was really an appropriate use of adolescent humor with it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm just going to take a quick step back in the webinar now. We've got about at the most 10 minutes left, and I think at the beginning I forgot to really welcome everybody here, and there have been some messages from Phil in Queensland, sunny Queensland, in Australia. So we've got people from all over the world. So hello to everyone who's listening, and sorry for ignoring you so far. We were just having such an interesting conversation. I'd like to draw your attention to the chat. There is a chat window in Zoom here, and if you've got any really pressing questions, do put them in the box there. And if we've got a minute at the end, I'll see if there's anything we can put to Jane as well. I'd better mention the conference as well, because we're going to see you here in the UK, right, in April.
Yes.
That's exciting. 12th to the 14th of April. We're all going to Milton Keynes, right? And we're going to this new venue, Kent Hill Park, the new venue we've chosen for the BAPT conference this year. And it's going to be great. We've got people traveling from all over the world, as with previous conferences, to present about the topic of type in the digital age. And I'm aware that you're giving 2 presentations at the conference, including certainly one keynote at least.
Just one.
On one of the days. So just one keynote, that's enough. It's pretty good going. And we've got a second talk as well. The first one's about bandwidth. Is that right? Is that the keynote that you're doing?
Right.
Please tell us what's going on with this bandwidth concept.
Well, a lot of people know about, there's a lot of neuroscience talk going around about where our willpower comes from and how we can use our brains for safer work environments and other things. But, people keep talking about doing more with less or trying to be more efficient. And what hasn't come to the fore is the fact that there's really just one bucket of energy in our brain that comes from how well we sleep, how well we eat, whether we avoid some of those bad habits and adapt some other good ones like exercise. Those are all the things that fuel our brains, whether we like them or not. And that pool that we create is used up by being nice to each other, by concentrating on hard things, whether it's putting a talk together or mathematics or listening. It's also used up by patience with those we love and those we don't love, causing road rage when we're out of it. The willpower to say no to that donut or whatever else we're trying to avoid. So on the one hand, you've got things fueling your brain energy and another a bunch of things draining it. And if you use up your willpower, for example, being your best self in a meeting at work, you just used up the finite resource you have to do all those other things in your life. So they've even done studies where they'll have, two groups, and one will do whatever they want for 30 minutes and the other one will do hard math problems. That's always what they do to make people miserable. And then as they walk out, they go by this table that's got apples and biscuits and cakes and things. And the people that didn't have to concentrate just take an apple. The people that had to concentrate take the cake, because their willpower is gone. They feel like they need that reward. And we were working with a company where, to say the least, we were trying to get them through executive coaching pieces. They'd all been selected for a leadership program. And this was the fourth group of participants over a 4-year period that we put through this program. And all of a sudden the water changed. They were being asked to do more with less. They weren't getting their 360s in. Their sponsors weren't filling out their 360s. We couldn't get them to schedule things. They kept telling us they were so out of time. And I was keynoting to the group, so I gave them this little quiz that basically, that Ann Holm, my colleague, and I put together for this keynote, asking them how well they were fueling, questions about, are you, waking up refreshed from your sleep in the morning? Are you able to limit the amount of caffeine and alcohol and such? And then questions about, are you satisfied with your work-life balance? Do you check emails all the time, which is a really good way to mess up your, that bottle of willpower in your brain. And we had people, the original quiz had 60 points. We had people score as low as 10, which told us that they did not have the bandwidth, is what we call it, for carrying out their activities, which is what we'd seen in reality. So since then, we tested it with another organization. We improved the survey, because that one we did in 2 days. It was, 15 questions on the back of a napkin trying to make a point in a keynote speech, but it worked really well. So we improved it, tried it with another company. 70% of their employees showed what we thought was probably a bandwidth level where they were no longer able to be efficient, effective, engaged, or energized. And that management team made substantive changes to how the workplace worked, which we'll share some of that at the conference. And then Ann and I got really busy. So now we've got those questions that tell individuals how well they're doing. They get to talk about how well their workplace is supporting, carrying out the practices that lead to good bandwidth. And then they get to rate their level of energy, effectiveness, efficiency, and engagement, among other things. And our buddy INTP Greg Husko at the University of Eastern Michigan ran all the stats for us, so we know that it's valid, that we know what the type connections are, we know where gender and age come into play, and that's what we'll be talking about. So we're hoping we know it works as a coaching tool, and we know it works as a team and organizational tool. So, and it's all part of, the digital age changed how we use information, and it is changing our brains, but it's not rewiring them to be better. We don't evolve that quickly. So we're putting our efficiencies and effectiveness at risk by simply adapting these new technologies, is one way the research might be put. So if you want to know more, you have to come and hear it. Are you still there?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just thinking, it reminds me of the concept of ego depletion as well. I was reading about that. This finite level of mental energy and willpower that we have that gets run down, and that is, no matter how much we pack our schedules, that limit is biological, and we haven't evolved past that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're still apes essentially. We haven't caught up with the machines that we're trying to run the world with at the minute.
And there's a lack of understanding of the consequences in management cycles, at least in the US. It's just, or management circles, it's just, well, do more with less. We have less, you have to do more. And when we start talking, your employees cannot be effective and efficient, management takes notice. when we've got the data with people saying, no, I'm making mistakes. We, this isn't working. So.
That's fascinating. So don't say any more. We're going to let people come to the conference and hear the whole thing. And you're presenting that with Anne Holm, right? Is that the two of you together? So
Yes.
the other talk you're doing at the conference really intrigued me. This is about style and clothes and its relation to personality types.
And it's really about how we put together our clothing and our image. And this came out of working with Jill Chivers, ESFJ type consultant in Australia, who is one of my style consultants. She tells me what to wear in the most lovely way. And she said that, we were out to coffee a few years ago, and she said, there's got to be a connection. And I explained how we did all the research on our type and spirituality information. And she said, we've got to do that for style. And she brought in a third player. Imogen Lamport is a well-known stylist and blogger in Australia. And she now knows she's an INTJ and has become quite the expert on type and working with us. But we've done depth interviews with women of every type. We've tested what we've found with many, many other women who do and don't know they all know their types. But some of them, we were Imogen's clients. And the way the interviews went were just predictable based on type. What we found out, the type patterns are as strong as type patterns for communication, for stress management, for every other application we've ever had. And when people say, well, isn't this kind of frivolous? I say, how many women do you know who have tons of clothing in their closet that they never wear because it's not them? They bought the wrong thing. And that's what we're trying to help people avoid. And it will be an online program, which is how it fits into the type in the digital age piece. And part of what I'll be sharing at the conference is not just the style information, which is, we will tell some laugh out loud stories of the different interviews, because we have permission to share from everybody we talk to, but also some of the digital tools we're creating to hopefully bring the project alive. We have a holding page called 16styletypes.com, and Jill's hoping it'll all go live in June. She's the I've done a lot of, we did all the interviews together and wrote the reports, trading off who did them. But Jill and Imogen are the driving forces behind it, because I am not the style expert that they are. I'm the type expert. So.
Wow. So has this changed your own wardrobe?
Well, Jill had already changed it bit by bit over the years every time I'm in Australia, but I'm certainly more aware. And actually, Anne Holm was one of our interviewees, and we've been in, so she knows the parameters of the project. And it can be pretty hard to sit in sessions and not judge the presenter based on what they're wearing, because of what we have seen in the patterns now. So it certainly made me more aware of things. And it's, there's too many things out there that are simplistic, like, well, extroverts will wear loud colors and introverts will wear more mute colors and patterns. And that's actually absolutely not what we found. Because of course, extroverts who are certain, have certain coloring and body types are going to wear things based on that. This is more about the process and how we get the advice and how we even get interested. Because we all know that certain types probably highlight fashion at a higher priority than others. But we know stylish people of all types. So what gets them interested? What turns them off? What are the big mistakes they make? And it's just been a lot of fun. And everyone that's been involved, our interviewees, our reviewers, they've all had a blast with it, which, goes back to really what type is all about, is self-discovery and finding some way to make this very difficult thing of living with, 8 billion people in the world, all of whom are different, just a little bit simpler.
It's fascinating stuff. I'm really looking forward to this talk. I mean, you're saying, is it only research with women, or have you got guys in there as well?
We didn't interview any guys, but a lot of guys have seen the reports and say they can see themselves in the same ideas that we're putting forth. So just for simplicity, we started with women. Also for marketing, that's who's most likely to buy it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Our style is somewhat complex. Well, I know mine is. As you know, it's not. But I always often relied on my partner to help me. So, you know, I've certainly learned a lot from women along the way, I have to say. If I'd been left to my own devices, I certainly wouldn't have got very far. So I'm going to have to wrap this up now. I'm really looking forward to your talks at the conference, the 12th to the 14th of April this year in Milton Keynes in the UK. We're really excited to be having you over, Jane, and it's going to be a really great time. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Just to remind everybody as well, I'll put up the slides for our next talks. If you can see that on the screen there, we've got 2 more of these webinars coming up before the conference. We've got John Haxton from OPP, also known as CPP, who bought them out recently, who licensed MBTI in the UK and the OPP. And we've also got Dario Nardi on the 6th of March, world famous neuroscientist, researcher, type expert. It's going to be all really interesting stuff. He'll be telling us about his brain scanning experiments and where he's going with his research now. So some dates for everybody there to put in their diaries. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, Jane. So you're going to get back to your afternoon there in the US, I think.
Yes.
And I'd just like to thank you very much for joining us. It's been really interesting.
Thank you. And I am looking forward to what's always been a great conference with what I call cross-pollination with people from different countries around the world who are all doing different things with type. It's always a great learning experience.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And yeah, thanks again, and we'll catch up soon.
See you in April.
Yeah, see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.